Good afternoon, all. It's so weird doing a presentation in real life again. It's like, I can see all these people on my screen. Uh, Again, my name's Chris Rickett. I'm with the City of Markham. For those of you who don't know where the City of Markham is, it's the northeast border of the City of Toronto, of the City of Toronto. Most diverse city here in Canada, also home to Canada's second largest tech cluster, and also home to Canada's largest cluster of semiconductor companies. But what I'm going to talk about today is some interesting work that we're doing around community economic development and using interesting demographic data and mobility data to really target economic opportunities along our main streets. So what we've started to do is looking at our main streets, of course, historically, when we look at our main streets and the challenges that they dealt with during the pandemic, were really a lot of challenges that were really amplified by the pandemic, but that existed prior to the pandemic. And when we look at our main streets, we really look at these as the hearts of our communities. Yes, they're commercial centers, but they're also places where residents and people come together to meet and mingle and spend time together and get to know each other. And our main streets are also places that ultimately are engines of economic growth and often home to lots of independent, locally owned businesses. They also have a much bigger multiplier effect on our local economy and generating local economic opportunities. And of course, during the pandemic, we realized a lot of the challenges along Main Street, and they really were amplified. You have one of the big challenges we see along many of our main streets is about having a healthy retail mix. So having yes, restaurants and bars, but do you have local grocers? Do you have a butcher shop? Do you have the things that the people who live in that surrounding trade area need to engage with on a daily basis so that they can shop locally? There's building those local connections, so getting people to feel safe and spend time in their downtowns as well. And also, that community economic development side of things. And so a lot of the responses historically to addressing these challenges have been investments in things like, let's do events to draw people down to our main street. Let's invest in infrastructure and in public space, in the public realm. Let's beautify our downtowns. Let's do marketing. All great activities and all super important. And of course, growing our main streets and helping them revitalize them. However, the challenge has often been is that there hasn't been data to actually quantify, A, is this working? And B, are these the right things to actually be spending our money on? And so one of the things that we really wanted to look at in Markham was, let's step back and use data to really understand what are the smart investments we should be doing in our main streets. And ultimately, let's use that data to look at how are those investments paying off. And so we worked with a program called My Main Street. My Main Street's a program that's delivered by the Economic Developers Council of Ontario that I actually worked with them to develop. And basically what the program does is help communities look at their main streets and do a deep dive from a data perspective to really understand what's going on in that main street. So doing an inventory of the businesses that are along that main street and that commercial center. Doing a community profile to really understand the demographics, the expenditure habits, the social behaviors, the social beliefs of the residents that live within the trade area around that main street. And then also doing a survey of those local residents and taking a very demographic representative sample to understand what are the things that draw them to their local main street, but also what are the things that they don't like about that main street, so that we could ultimately take those three different data sets and start to look at what are the right investments we need to revitalize and build the economic health of our main streets. The nice thing about My Main Street in this program, and it's being delivered in 65 communities across Southern Ontario right now, is in addition to that data side, they also provide a staff person that's dedicated to that local main street, as well as grants that can be flowing through to small businesses who leverage that market research that we do so that they can make investments in their business to realize those market opportunities. And the data that we got is super interesting. Of course, it's your demographic data, so understanding, the makeup of that population, their ethnic background, their ages, their marital status, household size, household income, all of that kind of information, but also their expenditure habits. What do they spend their money on? What types of things? How much does the average person spend at a restaurant? How much does the average person spend on meat at a butcher store? and also looks at things like mobility data. So using cell phone data, understanding how many people from a local trade area actually spend time in that local main street, versus how many people don't shop there, versus how many people might be coming in from other communities to shop in that main street. So some really good insights on who is ultimately coming and spending time in that main street, and understanding where they're coming from as well, so you can figure out how you can actually then market to them and get them to keep coming there. And so in Markham, we focused on two communities specifically. And so two main streets. One is First Markham Place. And so this is an Asian strip mall, lots of Chinese-owned small businesses. And if you kind of look at the maps here, the area in green in the center is the Main Street area or the commercial area. And then the area in purple that surrounds it, that's the trade area that we use. So, and we defined a trade area as basically a 15-minute walk from that Main Street commercial center. And from that, started to derive some data on, who are the people who are coming into those areas? What's their household expenditures? What's their average income? What's their ethnic background? How many people are actually coming from the local neighborhood to shop there versus how many people are coming from outside the city or other areas outside of that trade area to shop in there. And so we did first Markham Place, and then we also did Unionville, which is more of a historic main street and kind of an original settlement area within Markham, and to really understand what was going on in these neighborhoods and how were those local residents engaging with their local main streets. And so what that data allowed us to do in understanding who those customers were and who were spending their time there and what their expenditure behaviors were, we were able to start to look at how we could target market those people. So we were able to build a profile of the people who were shopping in that Main Street area. And from that, we could also, using postal code data, we knew where they were coming from. And so with that postal code information, as well as that demographic information and understanding what their interests were and what they spent their money on, we could start to target marketing to try to encourage them to come there. So Unionville, as an example, 90% of the people coming there were coming from outside of the trade area. So now we know where they're coming from. Now we can market to them to come back and have more visitor experiences in this historic downtown. And so it's kind of creepy when you think about it, because like your phone's bouncing around right now and you're like, man, how do I get my tinfoil over top of that, right? But this data, it's all anonymized at the end of the day. So it doesn't connect to you as a specific person. You can't do that. That's illegal. But the data helps us ultimately understand, build those profiles of who are the people who shop and their interests in those communities. One of the other interesting things we did, and we look at marketing, was helpful because now instead of just spending money on advertising, we can be more strategic with those investments. But we can also, when we make investments in events, and so Unionville does a big Unionville festival every summer. And so looking at that event, what we were able to do with mobility data is you kind of have Unionville off there, off to the right, and then you have some major hotels down to the bottom left. And so what we were able to do is, using mobility data, is understand who came to Unionville Festival and to that geo-fenced area. And if it was a postal code that was from outside of Markham, we then compared it to the postal codes that also went to one of the hotels. So we could basically start to measure, okay, who are the people who are actually coming and then staying over, as an example. So we could start to quantify potential hotel nights, which helps us then go, okay, this is an event that's attracting people to our community. How do we grow that? And if they're coming and staying here, where are they coming from? And let's market more towards that demographic and that social profile in that community so we can grow that event. Creepy stuff, eh? The other really cool thing that we've been doing, and this is more of a longer term play, and this really plays into the community economic development angle, because we often, as economic development departments, will support any business, but we want to be thoughtful when it comes to our main streets, because we want to build a healthy retail mix. We want to build a place that has all of those shopping points that local residents are looking for so that they come shop in their local downtown. And so the interesting thing that we could do through this data is, of course, we do an inventory of Unionville. And so we understand all of the existing stores and services that are there. But then we look at the expenditure data of those in the local trade area. And we can see, for instance, there's a lot of people who spend money at a green grocer. Wait, there's no green grocer in Unionville. So we've just identified a bunch of retail spillage. And now we can quantify how big that market is within a 15-minute walk. And now, working with the BIA and our team in the Economic Development Department, we're going, here's a list of the types of small businesses that have big market potential in Unionville that would add to that retail mix and make it much healthier. Let's go find entrepreneurs, ideally local entrepreneurs who want to start those businesses. And we can give them the market data to show the potential for their business and a breakdown of who their customers are and how they can reach them, whether they're on Facebook or Twitter or whatever social media platforms or whatever advertising routes that demographic and that social profile is focused on. So this data is allowing us to be much more intentional and the types of businesses we want to attract, and then actually working with those entrepreneurs to understand the market potential and make those investments in those businesses. As we've been digging into this data, it's been really it's been helpful for us to understand how else this data can be used in the city of Markham, not only from an economic development perspective, but also across the city. And so right now we're looking at how we expand the use of this type of data to other city departments. So whether that be to support our planning department through their secondary planning processes and helping inform that process, or helping our colleagues, working with our colleagues in recreation, in the library, and our cultural facilities to really figure out how they market and engage local audiences and how they design their programs. So we're really expanding how we use this data and how it can inform ultimately the creation and, of course, the ongoing management of the various programs and services that we deliver to residents. And when I really look at this from a community perspective, at first it seems very daunting and complicated to get into this world. But the thing is, we work with a company called Environics Analytics, which is a Canadian company. And they built a platform that is actually super user-friendly. So it's not like you need a data analytics person to do this for you. Does that help? 100%. But it's a very intuitive, user-friendly platform so that it's ultimately designed so that the business user, whether they be in recreation or they be in library or they're us folks in economic development, can go in and work with the data and understand it. And it's pretty intuitive to work with. So the barrier to entry is pretty low. It seems kind of costly at the front end, but when you start to look at it in the framework of all of your programs and the investments we make into programs and infrastructure and planning, it's pretty minuscule at the end of the day. And ultimately, when you look at the applicability and how it can improve service delivery and the types of things you're doing in your community, it's really it's a pretty low cost investment to get real good impact. And ultimately, the applicability of this data, I'm just speaking about, community economic development and one stream that we use it within our economic development department. We're also using it for supporting small businesses and doing market research and other things as well. But this has applicability across an organization. And so we saw some great value in it. And we're always happy to share our story on how we're using it and how other municipalities might want to look to do the same thing. And with that, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Did I end right at 20? I timed it perfect. Thank you very much.